Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, tmosso@the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Let me say this. If your idea of a Panerai is two hands, manual wind, on a tactical strap, covered in scum, and 30 meters below the surface of Alexandria Harbor bombing a battleship, this is not for you. This is for me. If you love high horology and complications, stay tuned. Today we are discussing a 2012 Red Gold limited series. This is part of the special series, a 250-piece edition. Now the watch is the Panerai Radiomir 10 Days GMT Oro Rosso PAM00497. So it's all of that with a power reserve indicator and 0 reset seconds. A beautiful watch in a wire lug Radiomir case that is 45 millimeters in diameter, slightly chunky at 16.5 millimeters thick, and then from lug tip to lug tip, 54 millimeters with a 26 millimeter strap spacing. Now we're going to throw this on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see it is large, but that's the look with Panerai. And I would say when you're looking at a Panerai watch, it's one of the rare cases where I say don't go lug to lug, look at where the edge of the case is. So here you can see the case. It's 45 in diameter, but it's also 45 across the wrist. So being that this is designed to look a little bit big, the better to benefit visibility and, frankly, fashion, this is actually a good fit. So I'd recommend this watch for a wrist my size or larger, so 16 centimeters circumference and up. And no, it probably isn't going to fit underneath the dress cuff, but maybe a jacket sleeve. The strap is high grade, and along with the buckle, a little bit richer than what you expect on a Panerai. Typically, if you're getting leather on a Panerai, you're getting some sort of calfskin. This is alligator. It's rectangular scale. You can see it's got a folded edge. It's stuffed with bolstering to give some volume. It's got a monotone stitch on the bottom. You can see calfskin, no crimping, no gouging, brand new Panerai factory strap. And then we've got a full deployant clasp with a wire lug style buckle on the top. And not just a deployant clasp, but twin trigger actuation, so it cannot open accidentally. This is a very deluxe fitment for a Panerai watch, which generally will just come with a simple trapezoidal pin buckle. So you know you're dealing with something very special here. Now the wire lugs are deceptive. They are not actually the type you would have found on a vintage Panerai 3646 combat watch. So used in the 30s and the 40s, the 3646 was the actual World War II era Panerai combat watch, and it had lugs that were essentially welded on wires. Well, these aren't welded on. We actually have two mounting screws on the bottom. You remove those screws, the lugs pull out, and then they separate in the center so you can swap straps. So whereas the original straps would have had to have been sewn on, these can actually just be fit conventionally. The lugs come apart and the strap comes off intact. The case itself is, of course, not a Radiomir 1940. A 1940 has stronger directly welded lugs, so that's a very different look. It's a little bit more traditional. The logo on there is actually a later one, not of the 40s, but I believe of the 70s, that OP logo. So this is a little bit of a mix and a match of different elements of Panerai history. Now, what Panerai calls Oro Rosso is roughly equivalent to Omega's Sedna Gold, Rolex's Ever Rose, and Hublot's King Gold. That is to say, it is 5N red gold. It is not pink, it is not rose, it is red, with a very high copper content to give it that redness. It's all polished to make an impression, and this is a luxury piece, though with a screw-down crown and a 50-meter water resistance rating. If you put it on a different strap, it can be used for conventional aquatics. Think the pool and the beach, just not necessarily diving with gear. Now, we have a remarkably prominent bezel here that features a vertical and then a conical and then a very slight horizontal facet before giving way to a dial that is matte tobacco brown, which blends beautifully with the rose gold hardware on the dial and the rose gold case. Now you can see here that most of the numerals on the dial are applique rather than printed or cut. So this is more upscale already in that regard than a conventional Panerai watch. We do still have the sandwich dial, however, which is a historic element on Panerai watches. So we have this stencil with the numerals and indices that's been cut and then placed on a solid disc of lume, which not only makes for excellent luminescence and ties the company to its history, but it also creates a weird depth effect that's sort of eerie and distinctive of these sandwich dials. What you'll also note here is there is an amazing amount of luminescence on this dial. You could see that the running seconds hand, the AM/PM indicator for the second time zone, the dog fang of the power reserve indicator, even the upper end of the power reserve indicator scale, fully luminescent here, so you will have no shortage of lume. in order to be able to hide the second time zone, or at least clean up the dial when you don't need the second time zone. That second time zone is a 12-hour format hand, so the two will stay superimposed. We don't have a 24-hour format hand. What we do have, though, is we have this little AM/PM indicator that will let you know, for example, whether you're looking at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. So you can see pretty clearly that little triangular wedge index is at p.m., so you're looking at 6 p.m. Now, another interesting feature is because these early Panerai manufacturer calibers, this is the 2003, they were so over-engineered. Eric Klein and Val Fleurier were looking to make a real impact when Panerai debuted its first in-house calibers. And so not only do we get stop seconds or hacking, but watch the seconds hand right here. When I pull out the hand, it 0 resets. So now I can easily set the watch to the second against a reference time. Super cool. What we've got at the bottom of the dial is what they call a dog fang style power reserve. If you are a Paneristo, you already know about this, but it is a single index that moves laterally as the watch winds itself or you wind it manually. Now, we do have a little date disc, and in good taste, the date disc is both the same color and, in the case of the numeral, the same tone as the dial. And so you can move your local hour hand as you travel while keeping your reference untouched. And notice that the watch is still ticking. This has not stopped the movement as I'm making my hourly adjustment. And I can adjust forward or backwards depending on which direction I'm traveling across the international date line there. So that is a nice feature that I've got. So I have a lot of flexibility in terms of how I set this watch. And then we go to the case back, and you can see I have a lot of movement. So this is the caliber 2003. Multiple mainspring barrels. You can see it has 3 of them, 240 hours of power reserve. The watch features an extraordinary endurance, 10 days. Really, all you have to do is wind this once a week if you're not wearing it regularly. You can see that the bridge is dual anchored on both sides, and it's a free sprung balance beating away at 4 hertz. That's a very durable setup, ideal for a sports watch. You can see that it pivots on 25 jewels, and that while it is machine finished, it's very accomplished in its machine finish. Also, Panerai's first in-house calibers used bidirectional winding because so many previous Panerais used either 7750 chronographs or 7750s with the chronograph removed as base automatics, and so they didn't want to associate their in-house caliber with the rotor wobble of a unidirectional winder, so they went with bidirectional winding, and then they used ceramic ball bearings to increase the efficiency, because unidirectional is more efficient, but you can get back some of that efficiency if you use ceramic bearings, and that's what they did. Now, there's sort of chiseling, and there's some machine beveling, and there's satination across the top here. We have a brushed finish like you would have found on a vintage Panerai combat watch, although the bridges are broken up. They're designed to look like a 3/4 bridge, so you can see that they are in different pieces for easier service. The beveling is there, and it's bright, but if you get close, you can see the bite marks of the machine that created the bevel. But it is handsome. This is all worthy of a display case back. It really is worth your while to look closely. The details matter. Screw heads are polished, and there's a lovely snailing on the edge of the bridges. And this is a watch for those who love complicated watchmaking. It's not necessarily for those who love traditional Panerai watches, although if you have lots of those, maybe there's space in your collection for something a little bit different. Proof that Panerai can give Jaeger-LeCoultre a run for its money, with a little help from Val Fleurier. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.